Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome back to the Gay Buddhist Fellowship. Before I introduce our speaker, it's our custom to go around and introduce ourselves. And given that this is probably the closest Sunday we have to the end of a year and the start of a new one, there's an opportunity, if you want, as well as your name, to just say an intention for yourself for 08. Which you can pass on as well. So, my name is Dean, and my intention is to move more from intentions to action.
I'm Larry Wish, and I'd like to open up more to love and presence.
Douglas Hall, lose weight.
I'm Jeffrey. I don't have an intention yet.
Rich, heart opening.
Justin.
I'm Robert.
I'm Chris. I'm Carl, and I'd say kindness and forgiveness for me for 08.
Oscar.
Baruch Golden, and my intention is to strengthen my practice.
Kiss, Britain, empty my email in-basket.
I'm Todd. One of my intentions is to try to eat less meat this year.
I'm Ramy. Mine is to eat early for things.
Michael, I would also like to deepen my practice.
I'm Will. I'd like to keep coming back here.
I'm Greg Jesser. I want to increase my intention and stay in the present moment.
I'm David, and my intention is awakening.
I'm Marvin, and my intention is to be more in the moment.
Stephen Chan, inner peace.
I'm Andre, my intention is to work less.
I'm Dennis, and my intention is to stay on a healing path.
I'm Peter, and my intention is to think less and accept more.
I'm Marty, and I'm going to relax and stay focused.
My name is Thomas Dwyer. My intention this year is to live in greater integrity.
I'm Norman.
I'm David. I'm Ray Dyer. My intention is to stay more in the present moment.
Tom Bruein, to begin working from other cities.
My name is Harley, and my intention is to continue exploration and wonder.
I'm Rob Miller. I'd like to let go of the past.
My name is David Axel, and I would like to focus on interconnectedness.
My name is Richard. I have a lot of intentions, but the one that has me most excited is planting a garden this year.
My name is Paul Shepard, and I want to heal myself within and without so that I can better serve the world.
My name is Clint Sider, and I want to be more consistent in my meditation practice.
My name is Ari.
Peter, more writing.
I'm Jim. My intention is to play my viola more mindfully.
My name is Steve, and I would like to age gracefully.
Paul, actualizing one.
That's Chris.
I'm Christopher.
My name
magnanimously, and my intention is to be more emotionally present in the moment.
I'm George. My name is Jerry. My intention is to take more risks and chances in life.
My name is Michael. My intention is to improve my skills at forgiving others and myself.
My name is Mark, and I intend to live with more integrity and maybe improve how when I choose my battles. Because I kind of learned last year that timing is everything. I'm Jack.
Did anybody think of one that they didn't get a chance to say?
Oh, I'm Jim. I intend to take more walks.
Is anybody here for the first or second time or returning after a while? Welcome. We have a social half hour after this. You're welcome to come and participate in. So our speaker today is our good friend Jim Wilson, who is a former abbot of the Chogye Zen Center in New York and has studied in the Chogye, Fuke and Soto traditions of Zen. And he leads a monthly Sutra Salon in Sebastopol now and comes to see us when he's able to. He was also a monk for 6 years, and he was a prison chaplain for the criminally insane, where he was bringing the Dharma to the deranged.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be back here and to see so many familiar faces. Boy, this sangha keeps growing. It's really, quite an accomplishment. So, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. I'd like to begin with a short sonic meditation. It's chanting the syllable ah. Pick a pitch that's relaxed, not too high, not too low, just a middle pitch, and also middle volume. You don't have to chant really loudly or really slowly, but and don't worry about harmonizing or timing, with everybody else. Just a deep breath on the exhale, the syllable ah. We'll just do it for a few minutes. Everything is just like this cloud of sound. Everything's like that cloud of sound. Very simple. So when I say that everything is like that cloud of sound, what I mean is that Everything arises due to causes and conditions, just like this cloud of sound. So, why is that difficult to understand? Why is that? Why do we forget that? Even if we intellectually understand that everything arises to causes and conditions, it's not always. In fact, most of the time, it's not easy for us to perceive. So, when I look at this, I do not perceive the causes and conditions which gave rise to this. I believe that causes and conditions gave rise to it, and that's called inference. Okay? That's mental inference. But I don't perceive the causes and conditions which gave rise to this. I don't know what kind of wood this is. I don't know what kind of cloth this is. I don't know where it was put together. It just sort of seems to be here, right? That's why we forget that things arise due to causes and conditions, because our perception of the world is a little askew. Things just seem to sort of be there, right? But with that cloud of sound, it's very clear the causes and conditions which gave rise to that cloud of sound were us. See? So we can understand this very simply. Everything arises like that cloud of sound. You, me, the sun, the moon, the stars, this, the bell, everything. So arises due to many causes and conditions. Yeah? Just like that cloud of sound. The name for this in Buddhism, incidentally, is dependent origination, which is a mouthful. The Sanskrit is even more of a mouthful, pratitya samutpada. But there won't be a test. You don't have to remember that. But that's a good. It's an idea, and it's a very profound idea. But your mind can tend to run away with it. So if you just return to something that's very simple to understand, like that cloud of sound, then, now I understand what the Buddha meant when he said that everything arises due to causes and conditions. That's what he was getting at. So, everything is like this cloud of sound in that everything is constantly changing. So, some people would chant, some people would take a breath, the pitch changes, the density shifts, constantly as we're listening to that cloud of sound and as we're participating in it. And we can directly perceive that the cloud of sound is constantly changing. But once again, if I look at this, I believe that it's constantly changing. I think the scientists are telling me the truth that the subatomic particles are doing a cosmic dance in there. But I don't see it. I trust that it's the case. I trust that modern science is telling me the truth about this. I trust that. I have good reasons to believe that, but I don't perceive it. So there's kind of a gap, between understanding and perception. Our normal perception of things, for the most part, doesn't reveal this constantly changing, shifting, rivering world that we're part of. I go to my room and the desk looks like the same desk that I saw yesterday. The carpet looks the same, looks pretty much the same. But actually everything is like this cloud of sound. Everything is constantly moving, shifting, changing. That's really the nature of things. So when the Buddha talks about how everything is changing, if you ground that understanding in a simple experience, an experience like that cloud of sound, then you can understand what he means. So the bricks of the wall are constantly changing. They're like that cloud of sound. You and I are constantly changing. Yeah? So everything is like that. Everything is just like that. Very clear. And when I rang the bell and the chanting stopped, that's impermanence. Impermanence is not hard to understand. It's just so when the conditions which gave rise to the cloud of sound ceased, the cloud of sound ceased. So when this exists, that exists. When this does not exist, that does not exist. That is the nature of things. Everything is impermanent, just like that cloud of sound. Very simple. So when the Buddha talks about impermanence, that's what he's talking about. But once again, like we forget that. It's hard for us to remember that or to keep it in mind because the appearance of the world is not one that yields that understanding of impermanence on a perceptual level. So, like the Buddha accepted the Vedic cosmology in which his culture was embedded. He never challenged it. All these heavens, deities, it was pretty complex. But what he did say is that the deities were impermanent; they would pass away. So that's quite an insight. So try going into a church and saying, or a mosque, that this will pass away. I mean, that's the kind of impact that a teaching like that has. But the Buddha really meant it. He really meant that. So, but it's hard for us because what we always want to do is we want to offer an exemption for something that we're really fond of. So everything is impermanent except for, and so that's why it's a good idea to contemplate impermanence on a regular basis. It's a good idea to sort of really get into that everything is like this cloud of sound. It comes to an end. So. Like this, a simple contemplation like that is very rich and rewarding in terms of understanding the Dharma. I refer to this as the gate of sound. So the sonic domain more clearly displays basic truths of the Dharma than other sensory domains. Like visual things, for example, are a little, deceptive. It's not that I'm not saying it's illusory, that perceptions are illusory, that there's no floor here, for example, or that you and I are not here, or the wall is here. What I'm saying is that our perception is skewed. Skewed in the sense that when we look at the floor and we look at the wall, we don't see that the floor and the wall arise due to causes and conditions. We don't see that they're constantly changing, and we don't perceive that they are impermanent. That's one of the reasons practice is necessary. Regular practice is necessary. Because the feedback we get from our daily interaction and perception of the world doesn't sustain these insights. And so we need to create situations and conditions which bring that insight and that understanding to the foreground, so that with regular practice we can deepen that understanding and begin to extend it further and further in our lives. So, does that make sense? So, do you have any questions or comments? Yeah.
I think one area where I can see impermanence is the historical impermanence. So I can look at this building and say, okay, 100 years from now, it's like this building will probably be something different. But where I have trouble is seeing impermanence in the context of just this very moment, and whether that perception or that knowledge of impermanence is irrelevant. So is it really important for me to see that this wall is impermanent in terms of how it serves a purpose for me in this very moment? And this is where I wonder about this whole notion and how it will help bring me closer perhaps to some kind of greater truth.
Contemplation on impermanence is a foundation for equanimity. Okay. So it leads to equanimity, and that's how it will benefit your ordinary interaction in everyday life. It also prepares you for the unexpected, and so that. So, for example, human beings are not particularly upset when the sound of a bell comes to an end, but they are upset when a plate breaks, and yet it's the same impermanence. So, but that's because in the visual domain, people forget, that things will come to an end. So, if a regular contemplation of impermanence will produce a foundation for equanimity in the face of the plate breaking or those kind of ordinary interactions.
So you can let it go. I mean,
yes, exactly.
It's easier to let things
go.
Yeah.
So that you would have the same sense of equanimity in the face of that kind of impermanence as you would when the sound of a bell ceases. So if you want to understand equanimity, for example, ring a bell when the bell ceases, and the mind that is completely content with that mind is equanimity.
What's the difference, though, between equanimity and indifference?
Well, that's interesting. Let's see. I'm trying to remember. Sharon Salzberg had a really good analysis of indifference, and my mind is not bringing it up at the moment. But so indifference is it's actually the seed of resentment. It's sort of nascent resentment, like in the sense that this doesn't bother me. There's a seed of judgment in there, in the sense that it's not worthy of me being bothered by. So at least classically in Buddhism, that's how they differentiate between the two. So equanimity is contentment. It isn't that. Say you have this antique plate that was inherited from your great-grandfather, and then you break it one day. Equanimity is acceptance of the fact, but you can also feel at the same time it's too bad. So indifference would be a sort of a pretending, that the other elements weren't there, that the full experience wasn't there.
I have a question also about desired outcome versus outcome that you don't desire. If you can accept that everything changes, but there's a whole range of ways something could change.
Right.
And it's not easy, at least in some circumstances, not to wish a change would be more in one direction than another direction.
Right.
You get away from material objects more into cultures and societies and bio-environment and so on. I can't help but hoping that an outcome is going to go one way versus another way. But I don't see a whole lot of equanimity in that. So I guess it's hard. It's hard for me not to feel that. It's also hard for me to feel that and have equanimity at the same time.
Yeah, it is. It is difficult. It is to have that balance. I'm not saying that it's easy, but I am saying that it's possible. So that I would naturally prefer. I guess I personally would prefer that, for example, that the United States move in a certain direction in terms of, say, its foreign policy. But at the same time, I realize that it's not up to me. That you do what you can, and then the result. If the causes and conditions are there, then there will be the desired result. And if they're not there, then it won't. You can't control the conditions. You can't control all the conditions. You can just do your best. In this world, that's the compromise I make. I'm just speaking from my personal experience. I acutely aware of how limited my influence is on the world, and how small of an effect, my personal wishes will have. That's not necessarily a bad thing. So I do my best. I speak when I can. I do what I think is good, and then I leave it up to if the universe decides to move in that direction, then it will, and if it doesn't, then it won't, regardless of my preferences. So Seng San, the third patriarch of Zen, in China has this poem on trusting the heart. The great way has no obstacles for those who do not pick and choose. When we cast preferences aside, the way is clear and undisguised. But even slight distinctions made, and earth and heaven is far apart. It's a very, very famous poem, and yet, when you read it, you're going like, the great way has no obstacles for those who do not pick and choose. But I got up this morning and I had toast and I didn't have oatmeal. So what is he talking about? And what he's talking about is equanimity. If I wake up in the morning and I want toast, but there is no bread, is this going to ruin my day? That's what he's getting at. So I remember. Well, I don't want to underestimate the difficulty of maintaining this balance. That's another reason why practice is necessary. The cultivation of equanimity is an ongoing project. And we lose our equanimity. As we practice. I lose my equanimity. I get angry that this or that has happened. But if you have a practice of equanimity, you can cultivate it and it can grow. Shakyamuni Buddha worked very, very hard at founding a sangha. This was a big project of his, which took 45 years of his life. And if you read the Vinaya, he was constantly refining the parameters of the sangha. Taking away this rule, amending that rule, adding this practice, throughout all those decades, So he definitely wanted a certain result, and put a lot of time and effort into achieving that result. So I don't think equanimity is contrary to making plans or moving in a certain direction. In the last year of the Buddha's life, his two closest disciples died. Shariputra predeceased him. Moggallana was murdered. His cousin Devadatta tried to assassinate him. And all of this happened in the last maybe 18 months. Of his life, and it's really instructive to see his disciples' reactions to those situations and Shakyamuni's reactions to those situations as well. It is possible to maintain a sense of equanimity and balance even in a sea of distress. However, when we ourselves fall into distress, it's good to be compassionate for ourselves, and remind us, it's to have a sense of compassion. Say, oh yes, I'm being carried away by that. More practice is necessary. So, is that responsive to your? Yes.
I just wanted to comment on and you sort of just did, on the difference between indifference and equanimity, and the way that works for me that I've heard is the whole notion of wisdom and compassion, and that compassion, indifference is not caring about what happens, and as soon as you bring in compassion and compassion for suffering, you can't be indifferent anymore, but you can still have equanimity. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
I have a question about, in the last third section we talked about equanimity. Recently, my best friend from childhood was here for 13 months, and he was dealing with a very major health issue. And I got together with him 2 or 3 times a week. And for whatever reasons, this might be the attachment, probably it's attachment, I wanted to really experience each of the times I got together with him as a wholeness in itself, without it having to be contextualized in what might happen or anything like that. And as a result, eventually, all the treatments ultimately didn't really work in the sense of preserving his life, and he died. And I saw what happened to me, which was that I did actually go to a place of loss, of a feeling of sadness, and then what arose for me was a kind of grieving process, in which I just grieved, and I didn't, to be honest with you, think of the grieving as being filled with equanimity. I didn't. I felt was a way of being profoundly connected to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then that too left. So, I have a little trouble. Well, it's still challenging for me. I guess maybe my problem is that I think of equanimity as static, and of course, it's probably much more a process.
The death of someone close to us is one of the great challenges of life. It's very, very difficult. And the way to use that situation to cultivate equanimity is to universalize the experience. So, I'm not the only one who will die. All will die. So, there's a teaching of the Buddhas called the 5 contemplations for everyone. Let's see. All will grow old. Like all will suffer sickness. All will die. All are the heirs of their own deeds. And I'm sorry, I forget the 5th one now, but it's like that. So he says this is one of the few discourses, incidentally, where the Buddha begins by saying, these are the contemplations for everyone, monk or nun, layman or laywoman, where he explicitly says that this is a teaching that all people should do, which is interesting. So he begins by just outlining the 5 contemplations. I am of a nature to grow old, I am of a nature to become ill, I am of a nature to die. I am of a nature to be separated from all that I hold dear, and I am the heir of my own deeds. So Then the second part of the contemplation, which is just as important, is I am not the only one to grow old. All are of a nature to grow old. I am not the only one to become ill. All are of a nature to become ill. I am not the only one to die. All are of a nature to die. I am not the only one to be separated from all I hold dear. All will be separated from all they hold dear. I am not the only heir of my own deeds. All are heirs of their own deeds. And then it concludes, knowing this, the way appears and the path emerges. Like so. Thich Nhat Hanh does this contemplation every day. This is a contemplation he does every single morning. These 5. Very. I know. When you first hear them, it's like, it's a little heavy. To start your morning, get up in the morning. But actually, they're very refreshing because they turn the mind away from its tendency to grasp, onto the path to the deathless. So onto the path to the unconditioned, and the deathless. So I personally do that contemplation every day. I find it very, very rewarding. So it's in one of Thich Nhat Hanh's books if people are interested in it. But many Buddhists do that. So that step to universalizing is the path to equanimity when one is in any kind of distress, actually. But particularly when one is in a situation that concerns the loss of someone dear or the separation of someone dear, either one of those two. So there's a kind of a folksy saying, all relationships end in death or divorce. But really, thinking about that and taking that to heart, understanding the ramifications of that, and not being frightened about going into that, So understanding those kinds of things is very important, but it's not the whole of the Dharma. The insight that is gained, from investigation of those kinds of contemplations, is that it opens up that there's another way of living. There's another way of living besides grasping after things, seeking experiences, accumulating objects. That's what the Buddha means at the end, that knowing this, the way appears and the path emerges. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for being here. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
You made a comment about if you were going to a church and make the comment about Indian origination, sense. So in light of that, I was thinking about Larry Yang's presence here last week, and he talked about this sort of merging in some ways of a Buddha with some sort of Christmas hat on. A Buddha with some sort of Christmas hat on. And last week he was here talking about how Buddhism is evolving based on who we are. And so in light of those two things, we talked about the usefulness and the meaningfulness of the concept of dependent origination. And what comes to mind, particularly with regard to Christianity and the reality that how the origination of our country, where we are now, our Buddhism, is in some sense is dependent upon how this country started. Everything from Martin Luther to the Reformation, all of that, our independence, how we live, is very, very, very much tied to some ideas around Christianity. So I'm wondering if I think about Meister Eckhart and people like Thomas Merton and Buddhism, and is there a dichotomy here in terms of not fully recognizing the connection between where we are now, how we receive our Buddhism, how we move forward, and our past, our connection being that this society comes out of a very strong Christian perspective. There's a lot of distorted Christianity, of course, in the same way. There'll be there are a lot of distortion in Buddhism as we go along. So I'm wondering, in terms of the concept of equanimity, how do we reach that point of equanimity in terms of our Christian heritage as a country, our society, and how we live, and our Buddhism? Because there is a connection there, and oftentimes it seems as though we don't want to go there. And I think Thomas Merton might have pointed a direction for us, and I'm wondering if you could share something.
Yeah, Merton is one of my personal heroes, has been for a very long time. My perception of the transmission of the Dharma to the West is that historically it resembles the transmission of the Dharma to China, as a precedent. It doesn't resemble very much the transmission of the Dharma to Southeast Asia or to Tibet or to Japan, But by that I mean that China had a very strong cultural heritage. It was already ancient. The United States isn't ancient, but follow me for a bit here. It had an indigenous spiritual tradition which was very strong. And I'm referring primarily to Confucianism, not primarily to Taoism. Confucianism was the dominant spiritual tradition in China. And Confucians had a very secure sense of the importance of their tradition and its profundity, and so when Confucianism and Buddhism met, there was a lot of friction. There's in the Chinese canon, there's a work called How Master Mo Removed Our Doubts, and it comes from roughly around the end of the fall of the Han Dynasty, and Master Mo was a Confucian literati, who converted to Buddhism. And his fellow Confucians were quite upset about this because the Han Dynasty was falling apart, and they said it is the duty of a Confucian sage to, support the culture and the society, particularly at this critical time. And it's a dialogue between Master Mo and his fellow Confucians about exactly, what Buddhism means, what Confucianism means, how they're compatible, how they are different. It's really very interesting. And it reminds me a lot of the kind of conversations that are taking place today in the United States when people have discussions about the monotheistic heritage versus the Buddhist heritage. And there will be friction. There will be, there will be some people who will say they're not the same, they're different, on both sides, And then there are other people like Master Mo who will say, well, actually, I don't think, I think you can compare this and you can compare that, But I think that process will take 300 to 500 years, But I'm content with that, Christianity in particular has a very strong sense of its of its mission and its worthiness. In the same way that Confucians had a very strong and secure sense of their importance, and Confucians weren't, they weren't willing to give that up just because a new religion, came, into the cultural mix, But, like you mentioned, people like Thomas Merton. One of my favorite Christian writers is Dionysius the Areopagite, who wrote roughly around 300 our era. And he wrote a work called Mystical Theology. Interestingly enough, mystical theology teaches the doctrine of no soul, in a Christian context. And there is a thread of this teaching of no soul within a Christian context. A modern representative, I'm trying to remember her name, Bernadette Roberts, I think is her name. And she actually has published a book called The Experience of No Self, which is fascinating because Buddhism tends to view the idea of no soul and no self as unique to a Buddhist context. It's what distinguishes, one of the things which distinguishes Buddhism from Hinduism and Jainism, for example, in India. But here you find exactly this kind of teaching within a monotheistic context. In my opinion, a bridge can be built between monotheism and Buddhism, a bridge of understanding, through the understanding of the doctrine of dependence, which I brought up earlier. The cloud of sound, everything arises due to causes and conditions. So in classic monotheistic theology, not just Christian but monotheism in general, everything in existence depends upon God, because God is the origin of all that exists. There was nothing, and then out of nothing, existence emerges. So ultimately, everything is dependent upon God. In mystical theology, you trace back the chain of causation into the luminous darkness out of which all things come. So that's the apophatic path of the monotheistic tradition. In Buddhism, everything is dependent upon causes and conditions. What I'm trying to express here is that in both traditions, the experience of dependence is absolutely central to awakening, as defined in the two traditions. In Buddhism, one of the meanings of ignorance is the belief that you exist separately or independently or on your own. And the removal of that at all levels is the removal of ignorance. So in the Christian tradition, the idea that you exist independently is also considered like a source of sin. Augustine, for example, refers to that as the basis of sin. Because you exist completely from the grace of God. So the two different traditions explain dependence differently, but the experience of dependence is at the heart of both traditions. So it's my opinion that a bridge of understanding can be built on the basis of that experience. And so I would not ask monotheists to give up their explanation of dependence, and I would not ask Buddhists to give up their explanation of dependence. But I do believe a mutual understanding could be rooted in that central experience. The experience comes first, the explanation is second. Okay? So Dionysius the Areopagite, at the end of Mystical Theology, which is a very short work, I think of Mystical Theology as a Christian heart sutra. It's very, but at the end he says, all of our explanations and all of our theology are next to it, but they are not of it. Okay, so next to isn't a bad place to be. Next to is pretty good, actually. It's better than being really far from. But on the other hand, it is important to understand that distinction. Once again, the experience of dependence, the experience, with every breath I breathe, the whole world is sustaining my existence. With every bite of food that I eat, the whole world is sustaining and nourishing my existence. Moment to moment to moment to moment, my existence here is a gift, a grace, if you will, from countless beings. So there's not even one moment or one breath that is mine, that I possess, that's my individual property. Realizing that, gratitude spontaneously arises in the heart. Gee, all this has been given to me, and I didn't even ask. It's really quite astonishing. Out of that gratitude, then the bodhisattva direction of helping other beings manifests. Because all this has been done for me, maybe I should give a little back. What do you think? What a good idea. Maybe I can assist other beings, instead of just being on the receiving end constantly. So those are a few of my thoughts. I've been very interested in, over the decades that I've been studying the Dharma, of watching this. And I do believe that the transmission of Buddhism to China is actually a strong historical parallel to what is occurring in the West today. And I know in the 70s, a lot of us had the idea that we would sort of, do it Satori, Kensho, 6 months tops. If we were really dull, 6 months. But that was okay, to have that feeling. But I'm very content now with the idea of a gradual rooting of the Dharma in the West. Something that will take many centuries. In fact, I think slow is good. It allows for the roots to sink deeper. Buddhism is still kind of exotic in the West. The altars are exotic, the clothes are exotic. It still looks sort of like you're going to something that's been imported. It still has an imported feel to it. And that was true in China for a long time also. It took a very long time for the Chinese to develop a vocabulary that didn't sound foreign. If you look at the translations of the sutras into Chinese, they tried 4, 5, 6 times with most sutras, before they got something that clicked, and they said, I can hear that. I can hear that now. And I think the same will be here. What is the English vocabulary for a lot of these Buddhist concepts? How will that work out? How will the English language absorb these kinds of understandings and these things? So even at that level. So thank you for the question. I appreciate it.
Actually, let's make this the last one if we can. Jimmy, are you available afterwards for any?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Last question. Thank you.
So perhaps a strange question connected in my mind around dependent origination in causes and conditions, and that's the concept which I don't understand, and so I wonder if you might have something to add to it, of time as just another dimension, because it seems to me all these thoughts that we have about do this, don't do that, and so forth are connected with this concept of a progression, and time as being different, and once it's gone, it's forever gone, and we can change how it's going to be in something that's never there versus it's all here. And so I wondered if you had any thoughts or comments about that.
I would recommend Eternity and Time's Flow by Richard Neville. But addresses that topic. But briefly, I would. Time is not another dimension of existence. Time is existence unfolding. Right? So by that I mean that if there were no objects in the world, if there were no things in the world, there would be no time. Time is dependent upon things. And things are dependent upon time. They are a mutually interdependent relationship. So Dogen is the best Buddhist writer I've come across on this topic. Particularly his essay E.G. Being Time. Being is time. Time is being. Like I say, time is a pine tree. Time is my right elbow. So what he means by that, time is a 16-foot tall Buddha. What he means by this is that time is not a vessel in which the universe dances. The dance of things in the universe is time. And if you understand that, then you can use time for the benefit of all sentient beings, because you're not trapped in the vessel of time. You are time. So how do you do that? So the way you do that is through intention. So in every New Year's is coming around. This is now New Year's Eve. And people make resolutions on New Year's Eve. Well, what is that? That's an understanding, an intuitive understanding that time is a wave of energy, that it is possible to use that energy in a transformative way. It's possible to plug into that energy and to the reason it's possible to plug into that energy is because you are that energy. So when you renewing one's commitment on a regular basis, on a cyclic basis, is transforming the cycle of suffering into the cycle of liberation. So that time itself becomes a means for benefiting sentient beings. This can in Buddhism this can get a little complicated, but in the monastic Buddhism there's a ceremony called upasata, which takes place on the full moon, in which monastics regularly renew their precepts, all 250 of them. Well, what's the meaning of that? That's plugging into the lunar cycle and using the energy of the lunar cycle to transform one's practice. In exactly the same way that a New Year's resolution, is used. So you can use those energies, those cyclical energies, as a basis for one's practice and personal transformation and the transformation of all living beings. So, for example, take the 5 precepts. Renewing one's commitment to the 5 precepts and that path of transformation on a regular basis. Why not the lunar? Why not the lunar cycle? Once a month on the full moon, something like that. So that's my quick comment on time. That time is not an independent entity. It's not an additional dimension of existence. It's you and me. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it.
Well, it's a very difficult
issue. So, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Do we have any announcements?
Like was expressed by many of us to deepen our practice in 2008, and there's a great opportunity coming up over Martin Luther King weekend, 17th, 18th, and 19th of January, for a LGBT 3-night meditation retreat up at Saratoga Springs, which is about 2.5 hours north of here, a beautiful retreat center. And the retreat's being taught by Larry Yang, who was here last week, and Anushka Fernandopoul, both of whom are students of Jack Kornfield, teachers in training of his, and longtime practitioners as well. And it's going to be a mixed retreat, LGBT. It's put on by the Monday night group at the Gay Center that meets 5:30 to 6:30. So there's some flyers out there, and Saratoga Springs website also has information on it, and it will be a great opportunity for those of us who have never been on a residential retreat. It's not as long as the 5-night one, and it might be a good introduction. So hope you can join us.
Who's the host?
I'm the host. I'm Larry, and I hope everybody can enjoy the foods that I've brought. Shameless plug, they come from the kitchen that I help to run, which has nutrient-dense traditional foods, and everyone can just enjoy it. If anybody else has interest in knowing what it is or why we make it, I'm happy to answer that kind of question. Oh, and wash your cups at the end. Oh, and the Dana Bowl will be going around. It's a totally voluntary contribution of money toward the Sangha. The suggested donation is somewhere between $5 and $8, and anything or nothing is acceptable.
No further announcements. Next week's speakers are actually a Dharma duo, so we're going to be hearing the Dharma from within the Sangha, life stories of two members who are Carl Azania, they're in the blue sweatshirt.
No, not me.
Oh, no?
Carl Azania. He's not here today.
Oh, I'm sorry. He's not here today.
But if he were here today, he'd be wearing a blue one.
You're Carl Wolf, and he's not here, and Doug Hall, who is here. So let's stand in circle for our dedication. By the power and truth of our practice today, may all beings take the opportunity of existence to become free.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.